All right, welcome to episode 9 of the Oil Hour. At least right now, it's just me and Leal. We've been talking about tyrannical commissioners, cyberbullying and fantasy football, and just etiquette in general. And I was going to talk about this with Leal, but I thought I can wait a few minutes until we're on air. So last night, we go to the annual Plaza District pub crawl. You pay $10, you go to like 5 different bars, you get a free drink at each bar, and you just hang out with friends. So, like, our third stop is Chiltepes, which is a Guatemalan place in the Plaza District. And we walk in, we sit down, and then like one table over, there's this like really methed out old lady smoking a cigarette. And there's no ashtrays. And she's just like ashing on the table, on the floor, just wherever her hand is at that moment is where she's ashing. And we're looking at each other like, can she do that? Like, like, living in Oklahoma City, most everything, at least that we go to, is no smoking. So I was like, well, maybe this place is smoking and we just never realized it. So I went up to the door to see if they had one of those like no smoking signs. I'm like, well, they don't have a sign. And I walked back and the host is like, can I help you, sir? I was like, yeah, can you smoke in here? He's like, oh, sorry, sir. No, you can't smoke. I was like, oh, no, I don't want to smoke. It's just, there's somebody smoking. So I was wondering. And he's like, where? And I kind of do the thing where you're like, you don't want to point and you're just with your eyes like, she's over, over there, older woman. And he's like, okay, thank you. So I go and sit down. He walks up to her and he's like, ma'am, you can't smoke in here. You need to go smoke on the patio or you got to smoke outside. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he turns to me and he goes, thank you for telling me, sir. And then she looks over at me and she's like, I didn't mean to offend you. I know it's a filthy habit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. I'm going to go outside so I don't bother you anymore.
Wow.
I was like, man, that dude totally knocked me out.
He did. Put you on Front Street.
Yeah. He was just like, and this guy right here is the one that told me about
it. and for some reason, I have this picture in my head of an old lady and her cigarette. I forget what movie, but there's a movie of this old lady smoking and she's got like half of her cigarette.
It's like something about Mary.
Yes, and it's just all ashes. She hasn't ashed yet.
Yeah, she was, I don't know. She kind of looked homeless, but she had a cell phone. But I've seen homeless people with cell phones. But she had like her backpack, and she just looked really weathered. And like, I wasn't trying to be a dick. I was just asking the guy. I was kind of like the hero to all the people in there, but to her, I was the villain. And I've always wondered, what's the etiquette in that situation? If you're somewhere and somebody's smoking and there's no smoking, what do you do? Well, I was just going to go check and see. I hadn't even made a decision what to do yet, but it just kind of happened.
Yeah, because you don't want to like approach somebody and turn out that you can smoke there.
Yeah, and she also seemed kind of crazy. Like I said, she looked all methed out. She could attack. I don't know.
You're lucky she didn't like follow you.
Yeah, when we left, I was like, I hope she's not like waiting for me. But so on this pub crawl, you get assigned to teams and you talk with the people on the teams. That's how you meet people. This one guy, he said he was from Nebraska. He came down here for college or something. But Deanne is talking to our friend Amy because they're both in the same fantasy football league. And they looked over at him and they're like, oh, we're in the same fantasy league. And I'm like, hey, you like fantasy football? And there's this long pause. And he's like, I played last year in a league full of guys in Connecticut somehow. Like, I guess he went and signed up for a public league he was supposed to be in. It was like guys from Connecticut. He got his ass kicked. And he was like, I don't really know much about football. And then he was saying something about, I know that there's that one player that got suspended And we're like,
Wow.
which one, man? You know, and he's like, I don't know. If you just keep saying names, I think I'll remember.
That
If
one
I-
of the Cowboys.
He's like, I think he was an African American. And we're like, Ray Rice. And he's like, I don't think so. We're like, did he beat up his girlfriend in an elevator? And he's like, I don't know. Eventually, it was Adrian Peterson. But this is a guy that he pays attention to football so little that you had to like say Adrian Peterson, and he'd be like, yeah, I think that's the name. That's the guy. So it wasn't the best team to be on. Yeah. So, see if you wanted to come on and brag, because this like Finch do. Haven't heard anything back.
What?
Well, looks like my my internet is getting kind of choppy. With, I guess, Cox is not as good as they said they were.
Google Fiber's on its way.
Yeah, just 5 more years. But
Better now.
okay, well, so to rehash, we have a new number 1 team, and that's the Hard Targets. That's Finch. Finch lost the Oil Bowl last year to the Dirty Hippies. So good for him. He's right there. He's right back in it again. Number 2 is the Dark Narcs. That's Henderson. Henderson upset me in the playoffs last year behind a huge game from Cam Newton. Of course, Cam Newton got in a car wreck the next day, and then he lost in the semifinals. But I play Henderson this week, so I'd really like to be able to knock him out of contention for one of those first-round buys. Leo, your Norman Nobodies are number 3. You benefited from Finch, or no, not Finch. Henderson beating Pyle. It was number 1 versus number 4.
Yeah.
And so Pyle dropped to number 4. He's 6-3. So now we've got 3 7-2 teams. If the 3 of you win out, it's just going to be a matter of points as to who gets the 2 first-round buys.
Which it's impossible for all 3 of us to win out because I play the Narcs next week.
Okay. So, and you've played Finch.
Yeah, I played Finch week 1.
Has played the Narcs. Yeah, Finch has played the Narcs. So, looks like, yeah, all 3 of you. See, if Finch wins out, then he's definitely going to get first round bye, because he's got the Ammo Dogs this week, which will be tough. But after that, he's got the worst team in the league in Morgan. And then he's got my squad, which is 3-6. And then Yancey's team, which isn't great, but it's also like middle of the pack, 5-4, 4-5. So Finch is in the best position right now. He's won 7 straight. So it'd probably be Finch and either you or Henderson. There's still room for Pyle and Bruce, maybe. Bruce does have more points than the Narcs and your Nobodies, but they're a game back. In 6th place are the Ammo Dogs. They have the most points in the league. They've had a really difficult schedule. I think that they probably deserve one of those first-round buys just based on how good of a team they are, but they won't be able to catch those 3 7-2 teams. I don't think so. Rogers will be a hell of a first round team to have to play, but I think he's pretty much a lock for the playoffs. But he's just out of it for one of those first round buys. So right after that, you've got the Dirty Hippies and Dead Again at 5-4. That concludes the teams with a winning record right now. And then at number 9, you've got the Roughnecks, which is Yancey. He's 4-5. He's, pretty balanced schedule as far as points for and points against. A game back from him, you've got me at 10 and the Dogs of War at 11. Then a game back from us, you've got Jessen and Morgan. And then in last place, you've got Duffy at 1-8. Duffy has now tied the Oil record for longest losing streak. He plays Morgan this week, so I don't think he'll break the record. I think he'll beat Morgan. But if he does not beat Morgan, he will own the sole record for longest losing streak. And just for his own sanity, I hope that doesn't happen. So as far as big games this week, we've got number 1 Finch versus the number 1 team as far as points scored in the Ammo Dogs. So in some ways, this really is a number 1 versus number 2. Finch is projected to win by about 6. Finch, he missed the bus. He didn't make it to the draft. I had a draft for him. Me early in the season, pissed off because his team was 0-2. Now his team is 7-2. He said, "Don't worry. If they win it all, he'll put an asterisk next to it since I drafted it." That won't be necessary because, I didn't pick up Stephon Diggs on the waiver wire. I didn't trade for Alshon Jeffrey. I didn't pick up Drew Brees when Morgan dropped him when he was having his bad weeks. I didn't pick up Gary Barnidge. I didn't pick up Jeremy Langford. His core team of Pierre Garcon, Lamar Miller, Adrian Peterson, I drafted those guys. But at this point, this is definitely Finch's team. He's put his stamp on it, and he's obviously done really well. The Ammo Dogs haven't changed much since draft day, and they really haven't had a lot of reason to. I remember on the bus ride back, we loved his draft all the way back to Oklahoma City, right?
Yeah. We talked, a lot about his draft, and the Drifters.
Yeah, and so it really was a great draft for Rodgers. Not a lot of busts. He picked Stafford, which Stafford you could say was a bust, but his 18th round pick was Tyrod Taylor. So it's pretty great when you get a consistent starter with your 18th round pick. And of course, Taylor's playing tonight. You've got that Thursday night game between the Bills and the Jets. I don't have NFL Network because Cox has a bunch of money grubbers and they wanted extra money for it. So I won't be able to watch it, but this is that game. They're doing color versus color.
I heard those uniforms were terrible looking.
Oh, they're awful.
Apparently the Bills are wearing red, and they've never had red as their primary color.
Yeah, they look like a blood clot. It's red pants and red jerseys, and I think red socks. The Jets are doing green socks, green pants, green jerseys, and instead of their normal green jerseys with the white on the sleeve, it's also going to be green there. I like green, but I can't stand it when the Jets go all green. I certainly don't want to see the Bills in all red.
Yeah, I heard the Jets all green uniforms described as Gumby-like.
That's a pretty good description. And it's like they got like a chrome green helmet stripe with them. It's just, when I heard they were going to do color versus color, I kind of like that. You know, it's just like one game a week. It's interesting. You know, there's some games where you think that this team would look really good going against this team in color versus color, but not when they just make up whole new uniforms just for the sake of doing it.
For jersey sales.
Yeah, and next week is going to be the Jaguars and the Titans, and the Jaguars are wearing like a mustardy gold color pants and jerseys. So enough of that. I think in my preview post, I said this game was too close to call. What do you think about it? Are you more comfortable leaning one way or the other?
With this game, I'm not. I mean, I think it's, yeah, it's a pick 'em on which one could win. Because, I mean, with Drew Brees, he could go out there and flop. He could blow them away. Hopkins could go out there and score 30 or score 10. Personally, I want the Ammo Dogs to win for the nobody's sake, but yeah, I don't know.
Looking at this, the two best players for the Ammo Dogs, Antonio Brown, he's going up against a Cleveland defense that gives up tons of yards on the ground. So I can see the Steelers really sticking to the run game with Roethlisberger being out. That might preclude Brown from achieving the 18 points that he's projected for. DeAndre Hopkins is going on the road against a really good Cincinnati defense. That might, 20 points against Cincinnati corners and safeties, I'm not sure about. And Jeremy Maclin, I don't think he can pick up the slack because he's going against the Denver defense. So on second thought, I'm going to feel slightly comfortable choosing Finch here. Not that I think just overperform across the board, but I think there's a few guys on Rodgers' team that surprised me in the least if they disappointed greatly. So that is, without question, the game of the week in my mind, between the number 4 team, Lucky Enough, and the number 5 Sooner Jack squad. This is a big game because it's 4 versus 5. It's a big game because it's two-time champions against each other, and it's also a rematch of the 2008 Oil Bowl, the infamous Oil Bowl where it was a tie and there was a bullshit tiebreaker in Yahoo, and now they both get credit for that championship. They're both sitting pretty as far as injuries and buys go. There's only a 2-point difference between them as far as projections go. Which way are you leaning with this one?
I'd probably lean on this one, even though the projected points is pretty close. I would probably lean more towards Lucky Enough, just mainly because Andy Dalton has just been outstanding, and he's going up against Houston.
Yeah, and you see that DeMarco Murray for Sooner Jack is projected for 19. When was the last time he hit 19? Well, he had 28 this last game, but I don't know. Maybe that's not so crazy, but I'm not so sure that he gets that, especially with Ryan Matthews in the fold. And Deshaun Jackson in his first game back from injury, I don't know how well he'll do. Allen Hurns is still questionable. So I'm going to go with you and say that Pyle pulls this out. That'd put him at 7-3, and I mean, good. If he gets this, I think it's no doubt, and he's in the playoffs. It'd be the first time since 2010 he makes the playoffs, so good on Pyle. Doesn't look like I'll be making the playoffs, but I can be happy for him. Yeah, it's been a humbling year for the Arrogant Americans. We talked briefly about my game with the Dark Narcs. I'm catching them at a good time. They've got quite a few buys, So maybe I can get some revenge, help you out in the process. Maybe the nobodies can jump up to number 2 because you're playing Jessen's Domination Station, and they've been awful. So what is your remaining schedule?
So with me, I have. Give me a second, and I'll get back to it here.
And that's kind of what I want to do more so on this episode, is talk about the big picture, the playoff push. Because let's be honest, the Whackers Hangovers matchup doesn't have a lot of bearing on things at this point.
Yeah, and I think I alluded to this either the last time I was on or the time before, that schedule is going to come into play. And if anything, the people towards the bottom can always play spoiler. And that's, like I said, hopefully that you can do with the Dark Narcs this week, because next week I have the Dark Narcs. Week 12 I have Sooner Jacks, and then 13 I have the Whackers.
So you've got, nothing is guaranteed, but you've got one of the easier matchups this week. If I can take care of the Dark Narcs, then next week, if you beat them, you're all of a sudden 2 games ahead of them. So that'd be huge. Then you've got Bruce. You're 1 game ahead of him already. So even if you lost to him, you'd be ahead of Sooner Jack in the standings. Certainly wouldn't help you with the others. And then you've got a rivalry game. Rivalry week is always a big deal, but it's the worst team in the league by points in the Whackers. Well, actually, the Dogs of War might be the worst by points, but the Whackers, they're a pretty horrible team. And, I thought they had a good draft. They've had horrible luck. And then they traded for Andrew Luck, and now he lacerated his kidney. So I don't think the Whackers are really going to stand in the way too much. Looks like 11-2, 10-3, 9-4 at the very worst for your nobodies.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, I want to say that I have a winning record. Actually, no, I don't. I have the worst win-loss record against Bruce at 2-7.
Yeah, Bruce has always got a quality team, so, and this year's no exception.
Yeah, so that one is definitely not a gimme.
Yeah, and let's look at the Dark Narc schedule, because they've got me, and like I said, they've got a lot of buys this week. Maybe I can catch them. Then they've got you. That'll be, especially if they beat me, it'll be a battle between 2 top 3 teams, but it'll probably still be 2 top 5 teams, even if I beat him. And then he's got Dead Again, which could very easily play spoiler. They've had a lot of bad luck with injuries. They lost Steve Smith and Jordan Reed for a significant period. And then they finish it up with the 2014 champion Hippies. The Hippies, they just keep hanging around. They lost Le'Veon Bell, but they just happen to have the number 1 waiver spot, and so they picked up D'Angelo Williams. By week 13, 32-year-old Williams may be pretty tired and not playing as well. So I think the Narcs have a better team anyway, but it might be a little exaggerated by then. So I think that of the 3 of you, and by you, I mean you, the Narcs, and the Hard Targets, the Narcs have the toughest schedule down the stretch. See, the Hard Targets, yeah, they've got Ammo Dog, which we've said is a tough game, but then the Whackers, me, and the Roughnecks. So not making any predictions, but I think it'll end up being Finch and you with the 2 first-round buys, which is great because you sure as hell don't want to meet Finch in the semifinals.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But yeah, so Tom Brady has been a hell of a pick for you, and
So I had somebody, my boss at work, 3 weeks ago came and told me, hey, I just did this big trade. You're going to think I'm crazy for it. And he told me what it was. And I got to tell you, at first, I was like, yeah, you're retarded. That's dumb. But then the more I started thinking about it, part of his trade was he traded away Tom Brady. And his justification for it was the closer that we get to our playoffs, the less he's going to be playing is what is his line of thinking, just to save him for their playoffs.
Well, I mean, that sounds good in theory, but I haven't seen Belichick rest him before any of their playoffs.
I haven't either. Nor have I seen Belichick rest him whenever they're blowing people out.
Yeah, I remember that 2009 game in like week 17 when they were beating the Titans like 55-0 and Brady's still out there flinging it around.
Yeah.
And maybe things change because Brady's like 38 now, but I don't know. I would have held on to him.
But this trade also, and of course, I think they only have like maybe 8 people in their league because he was able to trade away. So this means he had them on their team. Tom Brady, Shady McCoy, Adrian Peterson, and then someone else. All 4 of those people he traded away. So.
Well, speaking of Tom Brady, vis-a-vis the Patriots, Sooner Jack, they lost Dion Lewis for the season. So that's something we need to take into account. Bruce, he's in 5th place. He's 6-3. He's got a good squad. He's definitely still contending, but that's a major blow right before the fantasy playoffs. And he just traded for him, I think, 2 weeks ago. He gave away Calvin Johnson for Dion Lewis. And I mean, if I were you, I'd be ecstatic because he traded Calvin Johnson away to Jessen. Jessen's not going to be in the playoffs, so you don't have to face Calvin Johnson. And now you don't have to face Dion Lewis because he's injured.
Yeah, that's true.
Man, I got to tell you, it kind of hurts to look at all these playoff scenarios and not see myself in them. I've only had one losing season in 10 years. That was 2011, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be my second, unless I can run the table.
Let me see here. Who do you have left that you could either run the table on or play sport to?
I've got the Dark Narcs this week. Then I play Cobb. That's always a tough game. It's not really a tough game so much as it's always a close game. I mean, whether it's high scoring, low scoring, he and I always have good games. Then I've got Finch in week 12. So I could play Spoil, Henderson, and Finch. Theoretically.
Yeah.
And then I play the Hangovers. It'd be just like them to have their worst season on record and then still beat me in Rivalry League. But, man, I had a very risky draft strategy. It was, I drafted Arian Foster in the 3rd round. Looked like that was maybe going to work out for me. But, of course, he tore his Achilles. I drafted Ryan Tannehill thinking this was going to be his year. I drafted, I think, 3 rookie wide receivers because we got spoiled by last year's rookie receivers. And just nothing panned out the way I thought it would. Jeremy Hill was my first-round pick. Randall Cobb was my second-round pick. Arian Foster was my third-round pick. So there wasn't a whole lot I could do with those pieces, and I'm paying for it now. So really quickly, looking at the standings, we've talked about the rest of the schedule, and just for the hell of it, let's look at Pyle. Pyle's schedule, he's got Bruce and then Baldwin and then Cobb and Schmidt. So he could very easily win out. He'll be 10-3. And then Bruce, it's got Pyle, Schmidt, you, and Cobb. And then the MO Dogs, Finch, Duffy, Baldwin, Jessen. So the MO Dogs are 5-4 right now. If they win out, they're 9-4, but they've got to play Finch this week. If they can, even if they lose to Finch, if they beat the final three teams at 8-5, they're pretty much guaranteed a spot. But looking at the standings, how do you predict the playoff picture to look like once it finally rolls around?
So I think, well, basically, if everything ended today, you would have me going up against the Ammo Dogs, which I would not want to do. Lucky Enough would be going up against the Sooner Jacks. And then, of course, Finch and the Dark Narcs would have their buys. Hopefully, I would want to be in one of these first-round buy positions, and then possibly, to me, the best scenario I would want is Pyle's Lucky Enough team playing the Ammo Dogs, and then maybe the Narcs playing the Sooner Jacks, and basically strategically thinking, if you have Lucky Enough play the Ammo Dogs, then you have two good teams that's going to knock one out. And I would much rather deal with just having to possibly playing one really good team than having to run through like three of them.
Yeah. My prediction is Finch would be the number 1 seed. You would be number 2. Pyle would be 3. Henderson 4. The Ammo Dogs 5. And Bruce 6. So that would be a Lucky Enough Sooner Jack matchup in the first round, and Dark Narcs and Ammo Dogs. And then you and Finch would get the benefit of waiting to, let 2 of those guys get knocked out. I'm with you. I mean, anytime you can get a first-round bye, that's preferable, but especially when the alternative is to play the Ammo Dogs. They got the most points in the league. So that's how I think it'll end up. I'll save it for later, and we'll see if that's what happens. But I know that those are the 6 that are projected for the playoffs right now, just in a different order. But I really don't see it changing that much. Just you look at the Ammo Dogs; they're the first team that's 5-4. The next team down is over 100 points less than them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the next one is like 160 points less or something. So I think that these top 6 will be our playoff teams. What order, we don't know yet, but I don't think that the Hippies and Dead Again will be able to score enough points to make up, this point differential. If they end up with the same record as the Ammo Dogs or Sooner Jack, They don't have a chance to make it in. So there's going to be some guys beating up on each other the last few weeks, but I still think this is how it's going to end up.
One thing that I'm curious about now that we're talking about this scenarios and stuff is to go back and listen to the guys that you had do their podcast about our drafts.
Yeah.
And see what how close their predictions were to what's potentially playing out in our league.
Well, we know that the Yahoo predictions certainly didn't pan out. You can look at draft day projections, and there I am at 9-4. And who's at number 2? The Whackers at 10-3. Number 1 was Pyle at 11-2. They were right about them being one of the top squads, but
and the number 13 team, the nobodies.
Yeah, look at them. You and Morgan have switched places. Yeah, and of course they can't account for injuries and Eddie Lacy playing like shit, and Jeremy Hill playing like shit. But at least they can say they had it right with Pyle.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's the NFC for this week. Over in the PFC, I don't know if things are getting that much clearer over here. I mean, you've got a clear number 1 in Straley with the Enforcers. He's 7-2. Then you got the Drifters, that's Gray, and the Extreme and the Vandals all at 6-3. Although the Vandals, man, they talk about beginner's luck. They got the second fewest points in the league, and they're sitting there at 6-3.
And the most moves.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. He's just been making moves to make moves, which is not good. Then you got the Boomtown Brawlers at 5-4, and the FDC Chiefs at 5-4. So that's your top 6. That's also the only teams with winning records. After that, it's 4-5, 4-5, 4-5, 4-5, 4-5, 3-6, and 2-7. So it's just a big jumble over here in the PFC. I don't think the top 6 are a lock to make the playoffs. I think if the Vandals stumble down the stretch, there's a very good chance they fall out of that top 6, even though they're 6-3 right now. It's going to come down to one of the Enforcers, the Drifters, or the Extreme. Did you see Beller's uniforms and logos?
No.
I don't think I did a blog post about it yet. But I'm on record as saying I think the Extreme is a dumb name, but it's not my team. And so here is Beller's uniforms and logo. I think it looks pretty good. He wanted that color scheme.
Is he like a Tar Heels fan?
I don't know if he is or not. I know he went to Eisenhower, and they have baby blue, but they also have red, so I'm not really sure. But he's one of the top 3 teams, along with the Enforcers and the Drifters, which is great because those are 3 teams that already have their uniform situation worked out. And slowly but surely, they're all going to be that way. I think we have 5 teams left. Little Baldwin with the Blue Falcons is at number 8. He's lost 2 straight, but he's got the best running backs in the league. He's got Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley, and I think Mark Ingram. Let me see here.
Yes.
Yeah. So
with Ryan Matthews on the bench.
Yeah, he asked me what I thought he could do on his team, and I was like, man, you got the best running backs in the league. You got a top 5 quarterback in fantasy points, a top 5 tight end in fantasy points. You just got to hope that your receivers can make up for it. Like, there's really nothing else I can tell you.
Did he play Sammy Watkins last week?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Let me check. Oh, no, he didn't.
Ooh. He might have won last week if he had him in there.
Yeah.
Especially since Malcolm Floyd dropped a 0.
Yeah, but he still lost by almost 60.
That's true. Man, 0. I got to tell you, that's probably the worst scoring by a core of receivers that I've seen.
Well, you say that.
In one game.
I know, but I think last week Morgan was worse. I'm going to go check to make sure.
Because I don't think those. I mean, that didn't. All those scores together didn't even equal 5 points.
Let me check here. I think Morgan's was worse last week. Yeah. Yeah, this is so
Holy
bad.
shit. Okay.
So Morgan, his top three receivers accounted for 0 points. His 2 running backs combined for -1, and one of his flex spots was a 0. So between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players, he had -1 points. And then you look at his bench. You look at his bench, and you're like, well, it's not like he just wasn't trying. You know, he put the guys in the lineup that you thought would do the best.
All right. Well, then I take back what I said about Baldwin's Blue Falcon receivers.
Yeah. Yeah, Morgan's, in fact, remind me to go back and look, but I'm fairly certain that's the worst total for a starting group of receivers in league history. I mean, unless you had 3 receivers and they all caught 1 pass and lost a fumble, I don't see how it could be any worse.
I wonder if that's the worst starting lineup of the entire league ever.
It's not. Somebody asked me that. Oh, well, Morgan did. I think Morgan was worried he was going to be in the record book. And I assured him that was not the worst. Let me see. So the hard targets in 2012 scored 54 points. Morgan scored 62 this week, something like that. So Morgan's safe. He's not going to have the all-time record. Although the Cox are getting close to beating their own record for fewest points in a season. Of course, that's with the qualifier of while actually playing the entire season. So, but yeah, if you haven't checked it out, go to our website and in the top upper right, click the record book, and there's tons of record. And if you can think of something that we don't have on there, let me know, and I'll do the research and put it in there.
Yeah, the record book is pretty cool.
So, go ahead.
No, you're cutting out again.
For a long time. Honestly, I was just really lazy because I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And I eventually got it done, but
I think someone's stealing your internet. It sounds like I'm talking to Stephen Hawking.
You know,
I think I'm stealing your internet. It sounds like I'm talking.
huh? Well, we've got
Are you there?
what you laughing at.
So I think Brick is having some technical difficulties where you can't see his screen anymore, and he had to, I think, reset his router. I don't know if he's going to join us again. I don't even know if I'm still broadcasting. It says that it's still live. So I'll talk, and we'll see what happens. So in the PFC League, just like Brick was saying, you have the Enforcers at number 1 with 7-2, and then the following 3 teams, the Drifters, Extreme, and the Vandals at 6-3. I would definitely say that the Enforcers probably, looking at their schedule, they play the FDC Chiefs, the Nightmares, a top 5 team in the Vandals week 12, and then close out the season against the Blue Falcons. I would definitely predict them to keep their number 1 spot and potentially be a great pick to win the championship in this league. You also have the Drifters at 6-3, who out of the 6-3 teams have the most points. Their remaining schedule contains the Brawlers, who are at the bottom of the league. Or no, I'm sorry, they're more towards the middle. Then they have Pierre's Mechanics, who is in last place. They finish up with Team Tadlock and the Orange Bloods week 13. I see no problem with the Drifters possibly keeping their number 2 position. If anything less, I don't know. Worst case scenario, finishing in the 3 seed. You also have the Extreme, who are number 3 and then also 3rd in the league in points. they are going up against this week. They have the Dirty Dogs, and this game right here, projected points wise, looks like the Dirty Dogs might have the edge, but Extreme has yet to fill the quarterback position with Phillip Rivers on a bye, and then they have a flex position, which is currently held by Freeman, who's on a bye. So I see him more than likely putting in Tannehill as his backup, and then he's got more than likely probably the best case scenario for replacing that flex position as putting in Nate Washington or putting in West from Kansas City, the running back from Kansas City, who has, since Jamal Charles has gone down, has turned out 2 great weeks. In week 7, scoring 21 points, week 8, scoring 22 points. So that would be my pick to throw into that flex position while Freeman is on his bye. With all that being